An invitation. Come and see. That's what Andrew said. Hey, guess what? I think I found the Messiah. Why don't you come and see? Come and see. I don't have to prove it to you. Let him do the proving. See, I mean, Jesus, once somebody comes and sees, like then he's the one that convinces them. But here's the thing. Once you have experienced what God can do in your life, we can't help but want to share it and want others to experience it too. But then some things get in the way, right? Like I'm too shy. I'm just too embarrassed. I don't want to be pushy. Like I don't want to be like those people, right? You know what those people are, right? The people that like shove Christianity down your throat. Like I don't want to be the person who's shoving Christianity down the throat. So as a result, we just never open our mouth and do anything. Like that's not what God wants. Like yeah, we don't want to be pushy. We don't want to shove anything down anyone's throat. Listen to what Penn Jillette said. I don't know if you know who Penn Jillette is. Penn Jillette is half of the infamous magician team Penn and Teller, right? So if you know Penn and Teller, he's the big guy, Penn Jillette. They're both very outspoken atheists, very anti-God, all that. But listen to what he said about Christians. He says, I don't respect people who don't proselytize. To proselytize is to evangelize, to share their faith. In other words, he's saying, I don't respect a Christian who doesn't share their faith. Listen why. He says, how much do you have to hate somebody to believe everlasting life is possible and then not tell them that? I mean, if I believed beyond the shadow of a doubt that a truck was coming at you and you didn't believe that this truck was bearing down on you, there's a certain point that I would tackle you and get you out of the way. I mean, this is coming from one of the world's most vocal atheists saying, you know what? If you really believe this stuff, you got to go out and tell people this stuff. You know, one of the story that I heard him also say was how meaningful it was for him after a show where somebody came up and gave him a Bible and says, you know what, I'm not expecting anything. I just want to give you this gift of this Bible because I love you and I've been inspired by the things that you've done. And he gives him this Bible and he said he kept it to that day because it made an impact because clearly this guy believed what he said and he said what he believed. If you believe in God, if you believe that God saves, if you believe that God forgives, if you believe that there is an eternity of punishment for those who are not following God, if you believe that there is an eternity connected to God, that we live in heaven with him for those of us who do believe, if we do believe these things, in your notes, if you believe in God, then you cannot keep quiet. We can't keep quiet. Doesn't mean that we got to beat anybody over the head. Doesn't mean we have to say things out of line. Doesn't mean we have to judge people and point the finger and do all this crazy stuff. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about loving people, inviting people, simply telling them a story about what God has done in your life. So Jesus was a great inviter. Always inviting people. And you know who he was inviting? In your notes, Jesus sees and includes the people that others overlook. He was inviting the people that other people overlooked. He was inviting the tax collectors. He was inviting the fishermen. He was inviting the zealots and the people that had a checkered past. He was inviting basically people like us, like normal people, not fancy, not the well-educated, saying, trying to put on this big look of following God. No, he was just inviting people that other people overlooked. The fishermen, other people, the people that other rabbis would overlook and reject. Jesus finds people and he seeks them out. And he calls them not who they are, but who they can be. You know what's the first thing Jesus did when he met Peter? Is like, you know what, that name Cephas, that name Simon, that's not gonna work. I'm gonna call you Peter. I'm gonna name you Cephas, Peter, which meant little rock. And Jesus later on, inspires Peter to go and to be, instrumental in beginning this early church. Jesus is calling him not who he was, but who he would become, who they're created to be. God calls this out of us. It says in Matthew chapter 4, verse 19, and he says to them, follow me and I will make you fishers of men. Jesus is talking to his disciples. He says, follow me and I'll make you a fisher of men. Jesus doesn't call them to be richer, doesn't call them to be nicer, doesn't call them to be better. He calls them simply to be fishers of men. He's calling them to be fisher of men. Anybody here ever do any fishing? Some of you guys go fishing? Okay. I like to fish, you know. You go fishing and you got some good days and some bad days, right? Like, they say that a bad day of fishing is better than a good day of work, right? So, because you're just out there, you're just living life, but I've had a lot of bad days of fishing, right? A lot of times out there in the water, I catch absolutely nothing. Some really good days and some really bad days. In fact, one bad day, it was bad because it was also embarrassing. My dad and I hired a guide. And we went out, we were going fly fishing on the Farmington River. And this guy is an expert. He trained with one of the European fly fishing teams. And he was teaching us a very specific kind of fly fishing called, check nymphing. And so we were out there trying to learn this technique of nymph fly fishing. And we're out there on the river and he's like correcting me and I'm trying to cast. I'm just not getting it. And he's like working with me and I'm not getting it. And I'm just casting and I'm trying to do these things. He's like, do you feel this? Do you feel the lips of the trout on the end of your line? I'm like, no, I don't feel this. Like, I have no idea. Like, how am I supposed to feel this? Like, you can feel it. I'm like, he's like, do you feel the rocks? I'm like, I think so. I don't know what I'm feeling. And so we're out there and I'm casting. I'm like, here, just show me how to cast again. He casts out there, catches a fish. First time, I'm like, wait a minute. You're using my rod, my line, my nymph, cast in the same spot, and I've been doing it 30 times, and you cast one time because he just had a gift, I guess. I don't know. Either that or I'm just really a bad fisherman. Here's the thing. Some people, they know how to catch fish. Like, they'll just go out, they'll just always catch fish. They know how. They know what they're fishing. They know what they're biting. They know how to do it. They know how to read the water. And when it comes to fly fishing, you got to really study the water. You got to look at every little thing, every little ripple. You usually see the fish before you catch it. I mean, it's like this whole thing of how can me as a human outsmart this little fish with a tiny little brain, and I just can't do it. I can't outsmart them. But here's the thing. One thing about fishing is it usually requires a little bit of patience, right? And now that guide, I mean, he could go, he's like, yeah, on an average day for me fishing, I'll catch 45 trout. I'm like, wow. Like, if I catch that much in a year, I'm happy, And he's like, yeah, it's like, it almost gets boring sometimes. Like, not for me. So here's the thing. I can't really do that, but in order to catch fish, you got to keep fishing. One thing my dad always said, he said, if your line's not in the water, you're never going to catch anything. Like, you got to just keep dropping the line in the water. And for some of us, it's like sharing our faith, right? There's people that maybe you've been inviting for years and you're like, I don't know, they're just not biting. I'm just inviting them, they're not biting. And it's okay, like don't put the pressure on, but we need to be the light. We need to be loving them and encouraging them and being a good friend and a good neighbor and a good son or a good daughter or a good parent. And drop the line in the water and pray for them and just be an inviter, not trying to manipulate, coerce, or convince even. The goal that Jesus had was to make his disciples fishers of men. What is that? It's an inviter, someone who's willing to invite somebody over to your house, invite them to your small group, invite them to come to church. Say, just come and see, come and hear, just come and experience. See, us as followers of Christ, we're not called to just be a follower. We're also called to be a fisher of men. Andrew, that's what he did. He brought his brother Peter, said, hey, why don't you come along? Because Andrew knew something. Andrew knew if he could get his brother in the presence of Jesus, that would change everything. And same thing for us. In your notes, if we can get our friends in the presence of Jesus, he will change them. See, it's not about me trying to convince somebody. It's about me inviting somebody, getting them into God's presence. Maybe it's inviting them to come to church. Maybe you got to bribe a little bit. Be like, hey, I'll pay for lunch after, or dinner after, if you come. But come and come and experience this. Come and experience what God has to offer. What it says in Mark 16, verse 15. Jesus says, go into all the world and preach the good news to everyone. This is good news. This is good news. He says, go into all the world and preach the good news. This is good news that God wants us to preach to other people. And our life is our sermon, like how we live. How do you live? How are you acting in front of your neighbors, your friends, your family member, your boss, your employees? Like, how are you acting? How are you responding to the situations in life? Just go into the world and preach the gospel. And honestly, there's some things that you just can't explain, right? You have to experience them. You have to experience, and Jesus is better experienced than explained. It's better experienced than explained. I'd love to explain to you how good Jesus is, but you know what? It's better if you just experience. Come and experience. It says in Psalm 34, verse 8, it says, taste and see that the Lord is good. Taste and see. I can't fully describe it. You're just gonna have to taste it. Mark got this for me. It's Rockstar. It's blue raspberry. Wow. I can't really explain that flavor. Did you know blue raspberry is not even a real flavor? There's no such thing as a blue raspberry. Do you know why we have blue raspberry? Because in the 1950s, people thought that red dye number 2 was potentially something that caused cancer, and they wanted to have a raspberry flavor, and they couldn't use the proper food coloring because they thought it caused cancer. So then they're like, you know what do we do? Well, we've got all these other red drinks out there. We've got cherry and strawberry and watermelon. We don't need another red drink. We need a blue drink. Let's use blue number 1, and let's mix it with raspberry, but it's not even raspberry. It's banana, cherry, and pineapple mixed together. And we call it blue raspberry. Sorry for that little rant, but I can't describe it to you, really. If you've experienced it, then you know what the flavor is, but I can't really describe it to you unless if you taste it. I'm going to probably be wired here in a minute. That verse said, taste and see that the Lord is good. Taste and see. There's really only one way for you to know exactly how this tastes, and that's for you to try it. I can't explain it to you. You have to try it. But are we willing to share? Are we willing to tell people? Invite them. Say, just come and try it. Some of us, you know what we think? I don't know how God could use me. I'm just too messed up. I got too many scars. I got too many wounds. How could God use me to impact somebody? You know, I think I've just disqualified myself too much. Final thing in your notes is this. Maybe the very thing that you think disqualifies you is the thing that qualifies you. See, we know that we're not perfect. You aren't perfect, and I'm not perfect, but you know what you are? You are God's perfect choice to speak into somebody's life. Like God put you somewhere, even with all your mistakes and all your failures. In fact, maybe because of them. Maybe because of the things that you've went through in your life. Maybe that's why God put you where he did. Maybe because of all the pain that you went through. Maybe because of the rejection that you went through. Maybe because of the addiction that you went through. Maybe because of all the things that you did in your life. Maybe those are the very things that qualify you to speak out to the people that God has put you into their life. He's put you at your work. He's put you in your family. He's put you in your neighborhood. He's put you where he's put you. And maybe those are the things that qualify you, even with all the mistakes, all the failures. My goal has always been that Thrive is a place that we can bring people to. And just be like, yeah, come. Like we're all kind of messed up. Just come. Like you'll fit in. But here God has invited us into his family, but he also wants us to invite others. Jesus told a parable of a guy who was throwing a party. And he invites all of his friends. And the friends start giving excuses, like lame excuses, like the guy saying, oh, I bought land and I need to go inspect it. Like you should have inspected it before you bought it, right? And the guy's like, I bought some oxen and I got to go try them out. Like you try them out first. I got, married and I can't come. That one's understandable, I guess. But here's the thing. What did Jesus say? He said, then the master of the party is going to say, go out to all the highways and the hedges and compel the people to come in. Jesus invited people that other people rejected. The broken, the hurting, the messed up, the dejected, the scarred, the wounded. Invites people to come and be pardoned, to be forgiven, to be healed, to be restored into new life. And so I believe that God has placed each of you in a place that you can make a difference. Like, don't assume for a moment that the place that God has put you in is there by mistake. God has you there for a purpose. And it's so that your light can shine, that you can be a light in a dark area. And I don't know the situation. I don't know the family, the work environment, the school environment that you're in right now. And maybe it's not the most comfortable thing, but I believe that God has placed you where you are to make a difference, to be a light, not to simply blend in, but to be an inviter, because you are God's plan to reach the world. Imagine that. God's plan to reach the world starts with you and with me. And what a plan. What a plan for God to use people like us to just invite, to just say, hey, why don't you try Jesus? Why don't we read the Bible together and just talk about it and see what it says, see how it can inspire us. That is what God's plan is. God's plan is for you and me to be fishers of men, that we can go and tell his story to those that are far, that we can love them regardless of where they've been, what they've done, or what they're doing. We can love them, we can invite them, and hopefully inspire them to also become followers of Jesus Christ as well.